This is National Chess Master Rats at chess.com, here to continue my video series on the correspondence team match between my video lessons group and the team CARPE DIEM. And this was played on board 96. Our man is William 314. We're holding about a mid 1800 versus approximately 1700 rating advantage. Anyway, let's have a look at the game and see what happens. Okay, so we see a common position in the that's been analyzed since before the Civil War, and white elects to play a slower line, d3. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. They call it the pianissimo or something like that. But since you're allowed to use opening books and databases in a chess opening, I think it's time to put the pedal to the metal and test main theory, because this gives you a chance to learn it for the real game. I can understand players not wanting to go into the complications of all the variations of the two knights defense, be it the Traxler counter gambit or whatever lines black chooses. But it's a great way to correspondence chess is a great way to learn openings. You don't have to study countless lines and try to memorize them all. You learn them when they count. You know, there's nothing wrong with this choice, but I understand the virtues of correspondence chess because I played it for years. I played it with organizations specifically geared towards correspondence chess. And chess by postcard has pretty much vanished today. It's still a little bit going on. But for the most part, players don't understand what correspondence chess is, because when the internet came along and the post office was taken out of the equation, suddenly there was a new form of chess to play, but the techniques on how to excel at it weren't mentioned along with the new technology. So I'm doing my part to teach people how to learn to play chess better, and correspondence chess is an excellent way to do it. You learn the openings, you get a chance to analyze the middle games, and then you can look up the endings and learn them as you play them. It's not a substitute for over-the-board chess. It's not something you should play a whole lot of games on and get your moves. Look at the play your moves really quick. Say you have 100 games going. You're probably going to log on and find 20 games waiting for you. You don't just sit there, look, I'll play this, click, I'll play this, and go on right there. Now, if you're a decent player, yeah, you can have some fun, but you're not really learning chess. And ideally, we can all get better at this game, and correspondence chess is a great tool to do it. And that's what the whole purpose of this, one of the whole purposes of this blog series or video series on correspondence chess is to show all the mistakes players make, why they move too fast. How can someone leave a piece on pre in a correspondence game when you have 3 days to decide? Again, it's not a replacement for over-the-board chess where it just so happens your opponent's online and maybe you can trade 5, 10, 20, 30 moves with them. It's not that at all, okay? It's a way to improve your play. So, anyway, the black elects to kick the knight back, and again, the position is pretty much dead even. Now, I've had a lot of videos commenting on these rook pawn moves. In English descriptive, we call them pawn to rook 3. In this case, pawn to king rook 3. And for the most part, these moves are bad. They don't develop a piece, and they tend to weaken one's pawn structure. Also, if white ends up castling kingside, when black goes to, if black castles queenside and goes to attack the white king, tension is going to come up a lot sooner than if this pawn was on its original square. Black will be able to pry some lines open. So why does white play this? Well, one thing I've noticed over the course of the games is a lot of people are moving these rook pawns. No grandmaster book recommends these rook pawn moves. You won't find one. But I have a lot of students of all rating levels, 800 up to like 1200 particularly, that when they present their games to me, their opponents are pushing their rook pawns up real early. And since I said they're not getting these recommendations from master books, they're either their opponents are doing them, or they're discovering that, and they're copying them, or they're discovering that their opponents are putting bishops and knights on these squares, that either pinning a knight that they don't like, or the knight's coming down and making a fork on one square or the other. And they don't like that, so they shove their rook pawns up to stop it. Well, bad idea. Okay, if you, I show my students over and over again when they present these games to me, all you need to do is blast the position open when they're falling behind in development, and your attacking chances increase rapidly. But here we'll come back and we'll show an example of why this move was not necessary. I'm going to explain it. Well, I can show it now. Maybe black does, or white doesn't want black to play this move, okay, and trap the bishop. So he's trying to save the bishop. Well, you know what? This bishop isn't all that valuable in this position, okay. Right now, the way it's played, it's a shut-in piece, and if it's going to get into play, it's probably going to have to get into play by this way, okay. So if black wants to go ahead and take it, let him. And if he does, you can take back with the H-pawn, and suddenly black has a weakness. You need two weaknesses to win a game. There's one of them, okay? So there's no need to make this move. If you don't want to castle kingside, do what I always recommend. Develop a piece, okay? You put the knight on c3. Might not be the best choice, because then maybe black gets a chance to wreck the white pawn structure with these bishop moves. But, you know, you can always play c3. c3 has some potential. Maybe queen b3 at some point. But c3 is a perfectly solid move, which is common seen in these closed variations of the Italian game, okay? But in light of all that, develop a piece. So h3 is a waste of time. But you see, black doesn't want to play knight h5, because you answer knight, you answer knight h5 with a little trick, and there's the trick, okay? The queen. This uncovers an attack on the knight, and I'm going to talk more about that in just a moment. So white would have done better with, say, a move like knight bd2 or c3, which develops a piece. Then answer knight h5 with knight takes e5, and what's white do or black do? You don't have time for knight g3 because the knight takes c6. Okay, that gains a tempo on the queen. So white's winning a pawn. Black does not want to play knight h5. He doesn't want to win a pawn. He doesn't want to play knight h5 and trap your bishop. Okay, and trade it off. So a lot of these fears come. They're unwarranted, and it's one of these examples of how the internet has changed chess, and for the most part, it's sped it up, and it's also it's not taught people how to utilize books and databases for correspondence chess. Okay, even though they mentioned it, people have a misconception about this. Okay, so h3, and now let me find the right spot here. Okay, it doesn't play knight h5, bishop e6. Now this is a line that I talk about a lot. Now either side can do it in these double king pawn openings, depending on the position. White can't do it. The best way to meet this move, which in English descriptive is bishop to king 3, is to retreat this bishop. This is the best way to meet it. Okay? The point being, if black takes, suddenly white has a half-open a file, and at some point black will need to spend a tempo to safeguard his pawn, okay? Which also weakens his pawn structure ever so slightly. Yeah, white has double pawns, but it's not something black can exploit, okay? Another alternative is to develop a piece, because one of the rules that goes back to the days of Aaron Nimzovich: don't make moves which develop your opponent's pieces. Let him make moves that develop yours. So in this case, if black takes, I'm not saying he will, you can take back with the knight, and suddenly, this knight, look at how this knight has gone into the game. And this isn't forced, but sometimes just an illustration is good enough. Let me find the exact point, and I'll flick back and forth. Okay, here's the position with black to move after move 10. Now let's just flick back here. Look at the difference in the position. Look at the white knight on b1 and look what's happened to it. The only thing that's changed in black's position is the absence of his e6 bishop. And the only thing that's changed in white's position is the knight on B1 has jumped all the way up to C4. Now watch. We'll flick back and forth. See that? This is the advantage. Let's go back again. Nothing changes except those pieces. See? And one more time. Okay, let's bring it back. So a better move for white is either knight D2 or bishop B3. You don't want to take on E6. This is kind of a textbook. This is kind of a textbook mistake to capture on E6, and I'll explain why. I've covered this in a lot of games. Okay, the player that does this says, "Oh, I've doubled his pawns," but at the same time, you've given black a very easy game here. Okay, this will come up in a lot of different type of positions. First off, even though they're double pawns, they're controlling a lot of territory. See, white can't place pieces on those squares. Okay, that's the first thing. Next thing, black has a half-open king-bishop file to operate on. And that's the next part. Now let's move forward a little bit. Well, it's not letting me do it. I have to find the exact spot. There it is. Okay. Now white plays C3. Now, here comes queen E7. This is reasonable. White should think about finishing, before playing this, this is kind of like a little trap. White's trying to trap this bishop. Okay. The problem with a move like A4 is, what you're doing is you're kind of hoping that your opponent falls into a trap. But what A4 does is it weakens these pawns. You don't think about this, but it's going to come true later. These pawns get in trouble a little bit, okay, on the queen side. That this is going to decide the game. Pawns are best left where they're at. You don't move them until later. And at the same time, you don't move them until you complete your development. Okay? White isn't developed. White hasn't castled. White still has a knight on the back row and a queen. These have to come out, because if they don't come out, the rest of the army isn't going to do any good. And let's look at the rest of the army. This bishop is trapped in, and it has no place to go. This knight doesn't even have a useful square. So black hasn't committed which side of the board he's going to castle either. But that's okay, because this is one of those situations where when this exchange has happened as early as it is, white is better off not castling king side. The white king belongs on the queen side, and we'll see why when I get to it in a variation. But A4 weakens the white pawn structure, and it's a simple trap that if black is observant, black will prevent it. Okay, now the queen comes out and menaces a pawn again. At least the queen's getting developed. It's keeping an eye on E6. But let me go back, and because I wanted to illustrate a point about what I thought could have happened. Because this is something that needs to be seen, because I'm not sure if you're going to see all my videos. Let's look at a situation where white castles kingside, and at the same time black castles kingside, because I'm trying to demonstrate something here and finish off the discussion of why this wasn't necessarily a good move. Okay, now this didn't happen, but we're going to illustrate the point of what to do with the black position when you have these double E pawns. Okay, so it's white's move. Let's develop a piece. Whenever I'm analyzing, I always try to develop a piece or make some kind of active move that's constructive, because these are the moves that cause the most problem. Well, I was talking a little earlier about knight H5. Well, black still can't do it, because the knight takes E5 trick. Now, what I explained in a lot of my videos, the method is to first put the queen's on D8 usually. It's gone to E7, but let's put the queen on E8. It could go to F7, but I'm just going to put it on E8 to illustrate my point. Now let's develop another white piece. Okay, now the queen's off the back row. Now we can play knight H5. Okay, and now this bishop is actually threatened because this pawn is on H3. If this pawn wasn't on H3, it wouldn't be threatened, right? But black's threatening to take it now. And again, white doesn't have this trick because you've stopped and guarded your knight. So here in this situation, should white retreat the bishop, then you can just sink the knight in. And this kind of illustrates some of the attacking chances that that black can get. Now, if white takes, we're just saying if white takes, you can take back with the rook here. If white moves a pawn, he's weakening his position even further. His king pawns are getting even weaker. Black will eventually find some way to attack in this position. That's one of the reasons why you don't want to be running these pawns up. So this h3 move has actually hurt white in this type of position. But this didn't happen, but I wanted to finish the discussion on the method to use because it never came up here. Well, it kind of did. We'll see. It did only in the respect that black had this possibility but didn't utilize it. Black ends up doing something else. Okay, let's get back to the game. Okay, bishop b6, knight d2. Now, black elects to castle queenside. I think knight 8, since white's revacated his queen, I think knight h5 is a great move here. Okay, you're threatening to sink that knight in on f4, and it stops white from castling kingside because of the threat on knight takes g3. So I think knight h5 is a little more direct. Sometimes you don't want to castle first because then your opponent castles the opposite wing and launches his pawn storm. Okay, so here comes a knight, and generally, like I say, this knight belonged on h5. It's not going there. It's now guarding this bishop. Okay, and now I guess this is played with the intent of somehow freeing this bishop into the game. That's what appears to me. And usually, when you have these center pawns, I don't like to see d5 be played. Don't push the pawn. Let it sit there, because you're going to lose control of f5 here if white takes. And it's good to control squares. Okay, and white makes some exchanges. And here I think white's just trying too hard to stop a black attack that hasn't even gotten started yet. White's just looking for simplifying exchanges. And this starts giving black the better game, and we'll see what I mean. Because this rook is misplaced. And again, as I mentioned earlier, these pawns are becoming weak. White has not completed his development, yet he's opened the position up. The only pressure white has in this position is against this pawn, but there's no way to generate anything right now against this knight. So black activates his pieces, and here white just kind of bungles a pawn, and there goes the free pawn, and now white castles. And here we have a situation of a double blunder. One side makes a mistake, and then so does the other. The correct move for black is to play knight c4. Okay, and black holds a very slight advantage because he's a pawn up. Okay, the fact that he has a double pawn doesn't really mean anything. But these pawns remain weak. And why are they weak? Because white allowed this knight to get into his position, weakening c3, and this pawn becomes a target up on a4. The correct move is knight c4, but as I said, there's a double blunder. This is a natural-looking move to make, but what happens is white in turn blunders back. White to play should win this position, knight f3. Okay, this attacks this rook, and what's white going to do? Or I'm sorry, what's black going to do? If you move the rook off the second rank, you lose your knight, right? So we have to go into a pin, or we have to give up the exchange. If we put the rook over here on e2, now this move seems to win for white. See, that knight's stuck, and the same thing happens on rook c2. Now the rooks aren't working together. White can now play rook b1 and capitalize on a pin. So it seems like the best black has is to give up the exchange and play knight c4. And black has some compensation in that he has a pawn for it, but I don't think it's enough. I think in the long run, white will grind a victory out here. Okay, so there was a missed opportunity. Was White spending 30 minutes a move like he should? You know, Hans Berliner, the former world's correspondence chess champion, said at the high level you should take 3 hours to move. Well, I usually took longer when I was playing my strong master level chess. And then, especially when it wasn't my move, when I was waiting for moves to come in the mail, I would dig up the positions and look for more and try to anticipate what my opponent would do. I hand wrote pages and pages and pages of analysis of all my ideas so I wouldn't have to recall them later. So what happens is White just gets himself a really bad game. Obviously, he didn't analyze. The easiest things to analyze are threats, captures, and checks, because after this check, the rules say you got to get a check, and there's only 2 legal moves to look at, and one drops a rook. So this should have White should have seen this position before he played rook b1. Okay, now there's only 1 legal move, and suddenly White's in a little bit of a pickle here. He's got to be very careful that this knight doesn't get to d2, because if it gets to d2, you're going to drop a piece. So White gets a little counterplay here. Well, not yet. I'm sorry. The rook is covering this square, but White's trying to free his game. But this pin is just a nuisance, and White can't get untangled, and all these pawns remain liabilities, and Black's just going to mop up here. See, why is this pawn weak? Because this pawn was lost. Okay. There's an exchange or two, and there goes one pawn, and a4 is about ready to fall. And now White's finally trying to get his dark squared bishop into the game, but his other pawn is going to fall. Now Black has 3 connected passed pawns, and it's just a simple, easy, routine win, and the game doesn't really need much comment from this point on. I'll just kind of run through the moves here. It's just hopeless. Here goes the pawn, and he can't be stopped. So, got to analyze your games. You'll get so much better at chess. I spent a year playing correspondence chess when my rating was just barely over 2,000, and I came back to chess a year later, and from inactivity it went down to 1,900, and then it shot right up to 2,200 in 3 months. And I owe it all to correspondence chess, because you get a chance to analyze the game. And now just a quick checkmate. Okay, let's load up the other game. If we flip the board, reset it, paste it in. It's kind of funny the way this interface works. Sometimes it starts at move 1, sometimes it starts at somewhere in between. So either it is at move 7. Why did it do that? I don't know. Hope version 3 of the live server fixes it. Okay, so here we have an interesting move. Get you out of theory real quick. Cover this in another iteration. I think in another video. I think knight f6 is just fine. Just if he wants to take, let him. You'll get the 2 bishops and some rapid development. But here Black's playing a risky strategy. You're bagging a pawn, but you're falling behind in development. And if you look at the Sicilian defense Najdorf variation, there's a poison pawn variation where Black takes that pawn on b2. Or queen takes knight pawn, they call it in descriptive notation. It's always dangerous to take that pawn. Sometimes you can do it, sometimes you can't. And for the price of a pawn, White has 3 pieces out, and he has a half-open file to operate on. So Black needs some development. Here it comes. And I might take back with the e pawn here, simply to give my bishop, my dark squared bishop, some scope, because right now it's a shut-in piece. Okay, so let's go forward, and here White gambits a second pawn, but look at all the pressure he has. Okay, and also look at all the development he has. So here comes a little trick. Now Black doesn't have time for f6. I think queen h5 check is just going to lead to a lot of trouble for Black. So Black does the right thing and develops something. And here he blocks the check. And now White's developed all 4 minor pieces, is castled, has a rook on an open file, he's down 2 pawns. What Black should do now is develop another piece. Okay, this is of paramount importance. Get another piece developed. Instead, Black moves his queen there's no need to move the queen. But knight f6, if rook a1, you just play queen b2, and you're on this d4 pawn. And if white brings his rook back, just slide your queen over and accept the draw, because even though you're 2 pawns ahead, you can get a really bad game here quick, and that's exactly what happens. Okay, so queen a5 was just a waste of time. Your king isn't safe. Your development is behind. You've got to take care of that. You can't be moving your queen around. You're falling right into the whole plan that white had when you brought your queen out in the first place. He wants you to spend a lot of time moving that queen around collecting pawns. Now, if you can consolidate, yeah, you're going to win 2 pawns ahead. But you can't consolidate until you get developed. And if you don't develop, you're going to end up in trouble. And white just makes some exchanges which expose the weaknesses in the black position. And here they come. Okay, now you got to take back. Okay, decides to take with the king. Here's another exchange, got to take back. Here's another exchange, got to take back. And all of a sudden, white's got his pawn back. Black can't castle. Black's king pretty much has to go to the back rank again. And white's only down a pawn with the attack. This was a position that black could have seen had he analyzed the pieces, moved the pieces around on a separate chessboard, or it's even more convenient now. You have an analysis board, and instead of having to write the moves down, you can copy and paste right into that. I have, like I say, multitudes of pages of game analysis, all handwritten out, so I could consult it 10 days later when I got a reply back. I wouldn't have to remember it for those 10 days. Now it's these tools are there, and people aren't using them. So black should have taken a few minutes to see it. How long did I take finding this variation? A couple minutes. Okay, you have time. You want to win games. You want to play better. Practice your chess. That's what correspondence chess does. It gives you chances to analyze. And wow, look at that. Threats all over the back rank of a mate and 2. Now black gets to develop his knight develop, but not to an effective square. And white just keeps the pressure up, tempo on the queen. And wow, look at that knight. Look how powerful that knight is. What can black do here? Okay, black grabs another pawn. Did he have to do that? Probably not safe. What's the one thing black needs to do? Castle. So should he castle? Yeah, except for one thing. He can't. See, he won't let me do it. Why won't he let me do it? Because this king moved. So, black's in a lot of trouble here. So maybe his best shot was to take the pawn, but white just pours it on. Takes advantage of a pin. Opens up a new file, the E file. This is going to prove critical here in a few moves. Tempos the queen, attacks G7, attacks C7. Black has lost. So black looks for some freeing exchanges, but they don't matter. He's losing material. And white's ahead of rook, and the game is essentially over. And black plays another move or 2. And as I said, the E file opened up, and there it is. Now black is going to not only lose his knight, he's going to lose his rook, it seems. White's threatening a mate in 1. How can you guard it? Well, you can't move the king. You can't move the king. You have to shove one of these pawns. Pick one. You got 4 different squares. After that, this rook will take on E8, and you're going to lose the rook on H8. So black resigned. What went wrong here? Black didn't develop, and black didn't analyze the position and see the good continuations that white had. Anyway, good games by William 314. Better luck, sartresghost. Thanks everyone for watching. Appreciate it. And a few more to catch up, and I'll have all the results in until you guys get more results. And thanks for taking the time to look at this. And if you watch the whole series, I promise you're going to learn a lot about chess. Take care now.